This is an explanatory video about our final assignment in our reading of Tears of a Tiger, and I'm just going to explain what the assignment is and show a little bit about it. The assignment itself is right here. It is to write two news articles inspired by our reading of the end of the novel. However, before I explain about that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the news article itself as a form of writing. So, I want to show you top 6 text features of news reports. The top 6 features that make news reports what they are. To do this, I've got this news article. Sword fight breaks out after break-in. It's a bit of a sad story. It's a real story that was in the news. And so let me show you about it. But first of all, let me read it to you. The sheriff's office of Beaufort County, South Carolina, said a man who broke into his ex-girlfriend's home was foiled by her roommate, who sword fought the invader. Deputies said Elvis Javier Polanco brandished a 3-foot sword when he broke into the home of his ex-girlfriend last week, only to find that her roommate, Luis Delgado Hernandez, was an avid sword collector and skilled in the use of the weapons. Hernandez was able to disarm Polanco, cutting the alleged invader's arm in the process. Polanco was treated at the Hilton Head Regional Medical Center before being taken to the Beaufort County Detention Center. Polanco was charged with second-degree burglary and high and aggravated assault and battery. A second man accused of assisting Polanco with breaking into the house is still being sought. So here's the point I want to make about this news article. I want to make the point that it follows a very specific formula. This news article has very short paragraphs. It has a first paragraph which echoes the headline. It cycles through what I'll call the 4 W's. It includes a delayed identification of the people involved. It has what I'm going to call HW in the middle, and it ends with a look to the future. Let's have a look at all of those features now. First of all, the short paragraph thing. Have a look at it sideways, and what I hope you can see is that each one of the paragraphs, there's one of them, there's another one, even if it's a long sentence, each one of the paragraphs is just one single sentence long. This isn't the long kind of chunky paragraphs you would see, for instance, in an essay. It's short, quick, zippy, one-sentence paragraphs. One sentence each. Then let's talk about that thing about the first paragraph echoing the headline. Here's what I mean. The headline is sword fight breaks out after break-in. And let's have a look at the first paragraph there. We've got the story of a man who broke into his ex-girlfriend's home and was foiled by a roommate who sword fought him. So a sword fight broke out after a break-in. The headline is short, just 6 words long, but the first sentence is a lot more detailed. That's what I mean when I talk about the first paragraph echoing the headline. And now about what I'm calling the cycling of the 4 W's. By 4 W's, I mean who, what, where, and when. And if you look here, the first paragraph has a who, just a man. It has a where, Beaufort County, South Carolina, and it has a what, a sword fight. So we've got a who, a where, and a what. The second paragraph adds in a when. Specifically, it happened last week. It also gives way more detail into the who. We've got 2 people mentioned, Elvis Javier Polanco and Luis Delgado Hernandez. We've got more detail into where. It's not just Beaufort County, South Carolina, it's the home of his ex girlfriend. And we've got more detail on what. Now it's specifically a 3-foot sword. So more detail, but we've cycled through who, what, where, when, and getting a little bit more detail as we go along each time. Now, about what I'm calling the delayed ID. You might have noticed this one already when I was mentioning the who. So we get two people mentioned in the first paragraph, a man who broke into his ex-girlfriend's home and her roommate, but we didn't get actual identifications. This is newspapers trying to build up a tiny little bit of suspense. In the second paragraph, they break that suspense by telling us the names. And so that slightly delayed identification is, again, a pretty common feature of news articles. Now, I've mentioned the 4 W's, who, what, where, when. Let's now talk about the how and why in the middle. Now, in this case, there isn't much of a why, I think because it was a breaking story at the time, and maybe they didn't know much about why. But we do have how. How did the confrontation end? A little more detailed explanation. Somebody doesn't need to read to the middle of a news article to get the basic information. The middle of the news article has more in-depth information. That's the general idea of the way that goes. Okay, now for my very last feature of a news report, ending with a look to the future. Look at the last sentence here. A second man accused of assisting Polanco with breaking into the house is still being sought. Well, that's really just about what it is. It's a look into the future of what's going to be happening next. Usually the last sentence or two of a news article looks to the future just to ask us what's up next. And that's it. If you look at this, it is these 6 text features, the ones that I've mentioned here, that pretty much make up almost any breaking news article that you will read. Those features. Now let me get back to what is your assignment in all of this. I'm going to be asking you to write 2 different news articles. The first one is one that would appear on April 4th, right after the events of the day before. Just in case anybody hasn't finished reading the novel, you really need to. I don't want to spoil what happened on April 3rd, but something big happened on April 3rd, and the very next day it's going in the news. After you've written that one, the next one is a little more of a bit of creative writing, because you got to imagine beyond the end of the novel. I'm asking you to think about several months later, what might be happening that's positive in one of the lives of the young people involved in the novel. Did Keisha just get an award? Did BJ just do some amazing charitable thing at his church? Did Gerald break free of that abusive situation in his home? Did something good happen in the lives of Rhonda and Tyrone? Something positive. I'll be upfront. This is partly because I want to end our study of the novel on an upbeat note. Now, I want to show you one more, maybe 2 more things about this assignment. Before I do, though, you got to listen to me carefully. What I'm about to show you is something I did, but it's not something you are going to do. I got to be really, really clear about this, guys. Something I did, not something you are going to do. Here's why I'm saying this. I decided to write a news article to show you kind of how it's done. But my news article is from the beginning of the book, not from the end, which is what you're writing about. So I thought back to what happened at the beginning of the novel. Look what I've got here. I've got the same thing I'm asking you to do. I've got a headline, accident kills local basketball star. And then I've got a full news article after that. Notice how I expand my headline into my first paragraph. An accident last night claimed the life of a star basketball player at local Hazelwood High. Then notice how I'm cycling through who, what, where, when, who, what, where, when. Right? My next paragraph. Robert Washington was reportedly in a car with three other students when it hit a retaining wall on I-97 and exploded. Notice that? It's got more who, what, where, when details. Also notice that delayed ID, right? No name in the first paragraph, name in the second. As I go on, I give more detail. The other three made it out with minor injuries. Andrew Jackson, the driver of the car, was kept in hospital overnight for observation. It's just terrible, said Keisha Montgomery, a friend of the students involved. I came right here to the hospital when I heard something happen. Police say that drinking may have been involved. There are witness reports of the car weaving across several lanes just before the accident occurred, said Officer Jada Carson, who is investigating. We ask that anyone with any knowledge of this accident or what may have caused it come forward as soon as possible. Police say the matter is an open investigation and they expect to lay charges soon. A funeral service has not yet been planned for the deceased. So, see what I did there? Notice my ending is a look to the future. Notice just before that, I had a little bit of how and why. So, I've shown you again those same 6 text features of a news article that I started off with: short paragraphs, first paragraph echoing the headline, cycling to 4W, delayed ID, how and why in the middle, and ending with a look to the future. I'm going to make one more point. I would like you to, in your own 2 news articles, kind of make them look like a newspaper. And so I've given you a couple of ways to do that. I've given you 2 links here. One of them that I think is the easiest one to use is this one here, a tool that's possibly easier to use. I've got another one that lets you upload a picture if you want to make it look even more like the front page of a newspaper. And of course, you have the option to use Adobe Spark or Canva to do that as well. It's the last step once you've created your news article, and it's not the most important part. It's just one part on the rubric, but if you want to do well on this one, make it look pretty at the end. That's about all for now. Please, as always, message me if you've got any questions whatsoever about what it is you need to do for this. Bye for now.